Hey everyone, welcome to Cuberviews episode 7. This is your host Ian Braverman. I hope you're having a great day as per usual. Today I am joined by Ken Olson. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, Ian. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. A little bit of a long day at work, but ready to record and talk about some fun cube. Introduce yourself.
So, for you, those who don't know, my name is Ken Olson. I live in Massachusetts. Most people know me from the Worcester area. I was big in doing a lot of the PTQs and things like that, from being recognized from stores like That's Entertainment and a couple of other stores around that area. I've been playing Cube for maybe the last 10 years or so. I got into Cube by one of my friends bringing a cube to TJ Collectibles. And that's when I first really got into Cube and started learning about it.
That's awesome. I didn't know you were a PTQ grinder. What was your favorite format and deck?
I was a big standard and modern player back in the day. Originally playing Jund is one of those things.
Jumped them out.
My team was one of those teams that like really got into the Sprouting Thrynex days, where we were one of the first people in our area to really discover that card and really start playing it in our decks.
Oh, Sprouting Thrynax is sweet. I had that in my Peasant Cube for years. I mean, it's Jun 3/3, make 3/1/1s. That's so good.
Oh yeah.
And what do you do outside of work?
So outside of work, I work for a credit union, which is DCU. It's one of the largest credit unions. It's the 18th largest credit union in the nation. I do back end work, mostly helping with our members anytime that they call in from the front line first and have to talk with those members if they can't deal with those. I get a lot of those tickets from those members and working with the website or our app and trying to figure out their problems.
Oh, very cool. I was a finance major back in college, so I was also like in insurance and investments. So I've definitely been in that world for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about a really special topic today. Usually in previous episodes, we've talked about someone in our group who has their own personal cube started from scratch. But today's episode, we're going to be talking about instead of creating a cube from scratch, taking an existing cube list, doing one of many different things with it. For example, starting from scratch or take the existing cube list, copying it exactly how it is, keeping it how it is exactly, taking an existing cube list, making some changes to it, or it could be updating it over time or updating it based off of the original cube designer's changes. There's a lot of ways that you can take an existing cube list, and I'm excited to talk with you about that today.
Definitely. I mean, everybody has their kind of their own different ways of how they can get into Cube and how they can do different things. Some people are definitely builders, like just with decks, taking an idea from scratch and being able to do that. I myself have always been a type of person that I've been usually known with my people, like my teams and things like that, as a person who modifies. Really love taking a deck and figuring out what the pros and the cons of it, and then trying to add certain cards to those decks to make them a little bit better. And that's kind of what I do with Cube. Is I don't really like taking an idea and making it starting from scratch. I really like taking other people's ideas and trying to build off them.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great approach. We've had multiple people in our play group take an existing cube. For example, Sam from episode 1, he built the Unplayables cube designed by Machine Schooling, which is a really cool cube. That cube was basically only cards that were considered unplayable in their draft format, which was really fun. And then you had the Spicy Ramen cube, originally designed by Rinth, and then now the Budget Synergy cube by Ink Fathom. And we played that one on Saturday last week. It was a ton of fun.
Yeah, no, definitely. I like to usually I'll try to, if I can try to reach out to the different cube designers and try to kind of get their ideas of what they wanted to do. So I kind of have an idea of what they wanted to try to do with things. And then usually I'm not type of person that like some people are like extremely confident in what they do and they know what they want to do. And for me personally, like I like to do my ideas by committee. I love talking to people and figuring out like what things that they like because for me personally, it cube is a lot of taking the idea and doing a lot of the gathering with people, and if you can have different people who have ideas and they have fun with it, why try not to incorporate that into your cube?
Yeah, absolutely. Cube can be a very community-driven format where not only playing it with your play group, but also taking with my cubes also always taking feedback from the draft, what cards were too strong, what archetypes you'd want to see additionally supported. And even if you're starting with a already existing cube, you can take that cube and really branch off from it. Like, for example, with your spicy ramen cube, it was really fun having that be like a community project. We played it a couple times as is, and then you started to make some changes to it.
It's always a good idea to help, take the ideas of different people in your play group, even though they might not necessarily always be in your play group, but it's always good to have different ideas from other people.
Absolutely. And this new budget synergy cube that we drafted on Saturday was a blast. I had a really fun time and there was some really great decks. Like there were three of my top favorite cards to draft that I had my first three picks in. First, I did Emrakul, the Promised End, which is a really fun 13/13. You mind slave your opponent and also puts you in a graveyard strategy. I had Rise from the Tides, which is one of my favorite cards from I put in all my cubes, my Peasant Cube, my Bant Cube. And then I also had, oh, what is the name of it? The one that you get two bears, and if you have threshold, you get four.
Oh,
And
yeah, a couple of the different graveyard matters cards and things like that from the cube.
oh yeah, and it was a blast. And so tell us a little bit more about the budget synergy cube.
For people who don't know, there's some larger cube events that happen throughout the country. One of those ones was CubeCon, and one of the things that has recently popped up is the Boston Cube Party, hosted in Cambridge. It was their first year last year. They did just recently announce that they're going to be coming back for year two, so
That's
that's
great.
awesome. And I was actually this was the first cube that I played at the Boston Cube Party was the Budget Synergy cube, and even though it's gone through some changes since that time when I played it, it's much different. The version now that's up, but it really like started to turn my wheels of like how can we have a different cube. And for me personally, especially when we look at different cube groups, we do have some very powerful cubes, but I'm always the type of person that I want to try to get new players in and different ways to be able to do that. So the spicy ramen cube was just is a very low powered cube, but it definitely helps newer players who might not know all the interactions that come with, say, a legacy cube. And the same thing with this synergy cube, just trying to put things together where no card is really taking over the game. It's really your best way is to try to figure out how you can make that puzzle together.
Absolutely. And we cube every week at Games IRL in Avon, Connecticut. Forgot to mention it earlier, but in our playgroup, like you said, we have a lot of different cubes of different power levels and different structures. We have multiple vintage cubes. We have multiple themed cubes, for example, color restricted or changing the rules, different rarity restricted. But one thing that our playgroup always tends to go toward is either often a vintage cube, a weird cube, or like a lower power, just more chill cube. And I think that you've added some really cool contributions with this budget synergy cube and the spicy ramen. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean that's always my thing is, especially like I said, especially with my teams that I used to be on, it was always that kind of utility player of trying to figure out, how we can do different things and how we can be better. And one of those things I kind of realized is that we had a lot of high powered cubes, but not really a lot of cubes to really help introduce newer players or even just lower things that we might be able to help with the store. Even players who might just pop in the first time playing cube, we want to be able to give them something that's not too overwhelming.
Yeah, and when we cube every week, we do like a vote at the beginning of which cube we want to draft. And depending on who's there that week, really depends. Like for example, if there's somebody that's just in the shop hanging out might be a newer player, and we come over to them and say, "Hey, you ever cube before? Come with us." Then kind of the vibe shifts, and we say, "Oh, we should probably play something that's a little more lower powered, maybe not just explosive vintage cube where people can die turn one with a new
Yeah.
player." And tell me why this cube in particular gave you inspiration or why you were drawn to it.
When I take a look at cubes, I'm always trying to find things that are just new and interesting and different. I don't really like to play kind of what is the cube of the week or what's being really popular. If you're on Twitter or anything like that, you might see things that are popping up like the 100 Ornithopters cube is really popular right now, and a lot of people are playing that. But I really like to enjoy looking at a card and figuring out, is this card being played in multiple cubes? And if it's not, let's try to see like where we can try to fit this in.
Yeah, and that's great. And just because a cube is like a budget cube or like a lower power synergy cube doesn't mean that it can't be really deep and have a lot of different deep strategy. For
Oh,
example, that graveyard deck that I drafted, there was a really insane deck that Sam drafted, which was one of my favorite decks I've seen in a while just in cube. It was a three color, I think, Jeskai focused deck, but also splashing a couple colors. And he had Bring to Light to be able to find Pinnacle Monk. And then the Pinnacle Monk could bring to light. And then he could bring to light again for Ghostly Flicker, which would then link the Pinnacle Monk to get the bring to light. And then he would get Paragon Drake.
yep.
And it was just this crazy wild deck. And then when you have Ghostly Flicker, Pinnacle Monk, Paragon Drake, that allows you
Yeah,
to have infinite blinks because you can blink with Ghostly Flicker, the Pinnacle Monk, and the Paragon Drake and get back the Ghostly Flicker with the Pinnacle Monk. And it was just this insane, like, tutor, five color combo mid range deck. And
yeah,
there's some really cool decks from that cube.
yeah, it was very interesting the way that he was able to kind of put that together, plus the bounce lands being able to really utilize a lot of the cards that you can either turn them into a land or anything like that. So being
Yeah,
able
the
to use
MDFCs.
the MDFCs, so you can use the bounce lands to bounce that. And that was something that I kind of took into consideration when trying to build this cube, was how can we get different things to work together?
Yeah, and so when you're picking from a myriad of cubes that exist online, do you kind of focus more on popular cubes, like you said, or do you go by word of mouth? I know that you said that you talk to the cube curators often, or could it be reviewing just random lists that you come across on Cube Cobra? There's a lot of different ways you can find a cube.
Yeah, there's tons of different ways to find a cube. For me, like I said, a lot of times what I'll try to do is I find a card that I really like, and then what I'll do is I'll plug that into Cube Cobra and I'll try to figure out what other cubes have this card in it and maybe some different interactions. For the Synergy Cube, one of the things is, like I said, I did play this at the Boston Cube Party. However, I was looking at Cube Cobra and I went to look in for Synergy, and I found a couple different Synergy cubes, and seeing what cards are similar to them, what cards might be a little bit different, figuring and then trying to figure out what kind of cards can go together.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, just looking online for, like you said, particular cards that you would like to play with in a cube, an already pre-established, well-built cube that you can just sleeve up. Even you could proxy it and try
Yep.
it out. It's a lot of different ways you could do it.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a ton of different ways to be able to do stuff. I think it's always good to try to look to see, does somebody have a cube that you might be interested in, so you know that kind of the established boundaries of what somebody might have done, and then trying to reach out to those cube creators in case they have an idea of something they might be doing, especially like for an example, when I was doing the spicy ramen cube, before he actually took that to KubeCon, I had reached out a couple different times with just different things that we were finding out in our group of like things that we thought were a little bit more powerful. I talked to them a little bit, and they came with a couple of things that their group thought, was a little bit more powerful that our group didn't think about it. So it was great to have a different set of ideas that were kind of floating around to help him make a better cube for KubeCon when he was bringing it.
That's a really fun perspective I hadn't thought about, where you can not only cloning it for your local playgroup, but floating the cube and playing it to help the original cube owner and their playgroup improve the cube. Because one playgroup, let's say 8 players, you have 8 different personalities. Those 8 different personalities may not be exploring the full extent of the cube. There might not be a person who likes Blink in that playgroup, or there may not be somebody who likes Mono Red. And then when somebody else clones the cube and another playgroup plays it, they could be exploring different cards in totally different ways than the original playgroup hadn't even thought of.
Exactly. That's basically kind of my what my thought process was there are some people who might kind of go into a play style that they really like. In our play group, we have some players who are really big into Blink, some
Like
people who
me.
are just yeah, like Ian. Ian loves his Blink, but we have some players who are love their graveyard strategies and will try to force those graveyard strategies sometimes. So thinking that sometimes it can become a little parasitic where you're kind of just getting the same ideas over and over again. So being able to reach out and have a different set of, ideas from somebody or even just what they might prioritize over your group is always good to kind of go around, and it's always good to talk to people and just have more ideas.
So tell me about some of the conversations you've had with the cube curator. What did they look like? Has it been like, hey, we were testing the cube and this one card was too strong? Have you experienced a similar thing? Or so tell me how those conversations have gone.
So usually, so for an example, like with the spicy ramen cube, I had posted on the cube discord. If you're not familiar with it, there's a couple different cube discords that are around. In one of the big cube discords, I had reached out to them and I was like, hey, I was looking for a lower powered kind of cube, and I saw that this person had posted this, but I had seen that they hadn't updated it in 6 months, and I was like, has anybody, does anybody have an idea of like what could happen? And the cube creator actually was like, hey, I actually didn't know that you were looking at this. I actually have ideas to update this, but no one's reached out to me. If you want, I can give you some of the ideas that I had. And I was like, yo, yeah, my group is playing. We put together kind of an idea. It wasn't a 1-to-1, but it was pretty much, I think it was like 90% of the same cards that they had. So we tried to figure out, hey, what kind of things you were trying to looking to update. And then usually I will take their ideas and maybe put them into the cube. If we play that, I will then reach back out to them and say, like, hey, we recently played. Here are some ideas that we had. These are some ideas that other people thought, like, maybe one card was a little bit too powerful, or they didn't really have enough supporting cards for that strategy. So then I'll reach out and like give them that information to like hopefully get some information back. So I try to give them as much information that we have so that way I can get the best idea for it. And then sometimes you'll see them update something and maybe you don't really like that, or you don't think that that's like really what you want to do. So it's always a good idea to like take a look at everything that's going on.
That's a lot of fun. And then you kind of make a connection with this person. You can become friends with them too. It's a great way to meet new people just having this discourse.
Oh yeah, it's great to, and that's for me personally, a lot of like Magic the Gathering for me is really about the gathering. It's really about having those connections, and everybody has different play styles. Some people, are much better at, drafting and cube. They might be a better constructed player and getting into cube. It's always good to try to help different people out. And having that idea, that was one of those things where when I did reach out to the person who did build the spicy ramen cube, they had actually asked me, they were like, oh, are you coming to CubeCon? And I'm like, oh, I'm not coming this year, but it is something I'm thinking about next year. So it's like I do have that already built in way to reach out to somebody when things like that do happen.
I always take inspirations when I build my cubes from scratch. It's not like I'm completely doing it in a vacuum. Like, for example, with my proliferate cube, which was a mess when I first built it, I definitely took a lot of different inspiration from, example, the Counters of Monte Cristo cube.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really great cube. And also the proliferate cube that was on Magic Online. I took a lot of inspiration from that. Also, I'm building a new cube that was totally inspired from listening to one of the most recent Lucky Paper Radio episodes with Ryan Sachs about his Auto Battler cube. I'm building right now a inspired version that's like a multiplayer style version with similar ideas. I think it's so much fun when you play a cube to take inspiration from it, whether it be copy the list and make changes, or copy the list fully, or start a new project from there.
Oh yeah, it definitely does help to have kind of an outline or an idea when you are building your cube. Not to say that any one way is the best way to do it. It's just that the more ideas that you have, the better off you're going to have, especially for your play group and having a better time.
So one question I have for you is, do you plan to continue utilizing existing cubes going forward, or do you plan to eventually take the lessons that you learn from playing these cubes that you found online or from other people and build a cube from scratch? I know that we've had a lot of conversations, the two of us, before about how building a cube from scratch isn't for everybody. it can be a difficult process. For example, like I just mentioned, when I built my proliferate cube, it was a total mess the first time we drafted it. Multiple people said this is bad. I don't even want to play this. And it's really difficult to take feedback like that, especially for like newer players who haven't really played cube before or are new to Magic in general. It's daunting to build a cube when your playgroup sees it and wants to play it.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like, depending on your personality, there are some people who can take feedback like that, like, oh, your cube is terrible. And some people can't really take that feedback and like it really hurts them. They might not ever play that cube again. There are other people who are like, oh, this is terrible, but I can make it better. And, everybody has those different ideas. Me personally, I don't really like taking an idea and building it myself. I really like taking ideas that other people have done and trying to make them better. So I don't really feel that I myself am ever going to really take a cube and build it from scratch myself because I like taking an idea and just making it my own in a sense. And I like to have that kind of pre-built kind of net in a sense, where other people have said like, "Oh, this is a pretty good cube, but how can I make it just a little bit better?"
Yeah, there are a lot of benefits to taking a cube from an existing place. Like, for example, if you take like a well-known popular cube, it'll be hopefully well designed, have taken a lot of feedback from its local play group or other people who have cloned it and has become a very good foundation for a cube and have good fundamentals from its cube construction. For example, having a good amount of density of fixing, interaction. And when you take an existing cube that has really good fundamentals and build upon it, for example, if you were to be new to building cubes and hadn't played a lot of cube before, but you just wanted to build one, you might not put in enough fixing. And so people feel restricted in the decks they can draft, or there might not be enough interaction. And so players feel like it's just two ships going in the night. And I've built many cubes at this point. I still build new cubes where it's like, oh, there was no interaction, or this one archetype was just way too powerful. And so when you start with a foundation of a well-designed cube, that can really help that.
Yeah, you definitely take a lot of the kinks that are in a cube out by taking somebody else's ideas. I mean, a lot of people get into cube by like get the device of just take 360 cards that you love and put them into a thing and just play with those. And it's like, okay, that's not always the best idea. That's not always the greatest advice. But being able to have ideas from other people, you've really gotten a lot of those kinks, a lot of those like trials and tribulations that the other cubes have gone through, where you have more of an idea and you can kind of start doing your swaps, your one for one swaps in a sense of like, oh, maybe this new card came out and this fills a hole where something else might be kind of lacking.
Yeah, and building upon that, when you see a really fun cube online or you play one outside your playgroup that's really interesting, cloning a cube and building it in paper can be a really great way to expose this cube or type of cube to your playgroup. For example, if nobody in your playgroup had done a color restricted cube before and people were like, I don't know if that would really be fun, and you weren't really sure how to build it, you could just take an existing color restricted cube and show it to the play group, and maybe people really like it and expands the cube horizons for your group.
Yep, I've always come to the point of like playing more things just builds you as a better Magic player as a total. And a lot of people only play those higher power cubes and don't really like understand because they've just been set in that mindset that they become these kind of limited masters in this one cube where there's so many other different ideas out there that you don't really get exposed to it. And being able to maybe make something, you maybe might inspire somebody else in your cube group to make us either a cube that's similar to it or even just a cube that might be completely opposite. A lot of the color shifted cubes, you might have, for an example, Ian, you have your Rakdos cube and things like that. And we have a couple other people who have a couple other color limited cubes in our group. So it's always just a different idea.
Like you said, when your play group just plays one type of cube all the time, may it be vintage cube, you're not getting the full breadth of what cube can be. And for example, if you're somebody who wants to go to CubeCon next year, 2025, and you're trying to spike it and try and do really well, if you haven't been exposed to a lot of different types of cubes like lower power or and high power synergy themed cubes, it might be really hard to do well in a wide variety of drafts because you can put in some say at KubeCon, like, I don't want to play these ones or these are my top picks, but sometimes you just put into something that you may be completely unaware of. So just like you would do in Modern, when you get to test a lot of different decks, I'm going to play Yawgmoth or I'm going to play Murktide, and maybe those aren't your favorite decks, but just getting the perspective of how those decks play can help you as a player know how to beat those decks.
Oh yeah, definitely getting exposed to different things. Maybe you are just an aggro player and you really enjoy aggro, but taking a friend's deck that maybe they just play control. So maybe you borrow your friend's deck and you actually play control to really learn what the ins and out of control is, because maybe you're just playing the same thing. And the same thing with Cube. Sometimes people get locked into like, this is what I really enjoy playing. But being able to draft different things, you expose yourself, you become a better player. And really, I'm always the idea of you want to try to help everybody in your group, because if you're just going 3-0 every time you play Cube, are you really helping everybody in your group be a better player? Not really. So, if you can get people up to your level, you're going to have a better gameplay experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I do that's kind of fun is I'll build cubes to kind of challenge myself. Like I built my Bant cube because I love Bant. I mean, I always play Blink, I always play Blue-Eye Control, I always play those kind of colors,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I feel really comfortable in. But then I built my Rakdos cube kind of as a challenge to myself to say, I'm not really that good at playing Rakdos, and it's not really my go-to. So by building the Rakdos cube and taking inspiration from the Jund cube or other
Yep.
Rakdos cubes, it really forced me to focus in on how Rakdos is played. And when I play that cube, it's kind of building my horizons on different types of strategies that now I really enjoy playing. I really enjoy playing the Rakdos cube. When I built it, I was like, I actually really like playing this.
Yeah, there's a lot, especially when you're trying to you do those color limited cubes. You're really forcing yourself to look at all different types of strategies and really what can you come out of that. Like especially, with Rakdos, most people think of like a type of reanimator or even tokens or things like that. But there's so much more. There's Storm, there's all these different things that you don't really think about that you could be playing.
One question that I have for you is when you have the cube that you've cloned down, how do you make changes to this cube? Do you pay attention to updates from the original designer? Do you try to not stray too far from the original designer's intentions? Are you trying to give decadence, if that's the right word, to the original design? Or do you just kind of say, I'm going to build my own version of this?
So for me personally, what I always like to do is I do like to try to clone the cube and build it in paper as closely as I can to the original list. And then once I have the original list, I then start to look at other cubes that might be similar to it. So let's say, for an example, the cube that I've recently have put together, which is the budget synergy cube. It was very budget. It was very synergistic. I started taking a look at a couple of other cubes. A few cubes that kind of popped into my mind was Cucumber, which is a synergy cube that it's not as budget version. It has a little bit higher up on that. That's by Dinkois. And then the other cube that I really took a look at was the Build Around cube by Ryan Sachs. He had some ideas, and one of the things that he has done with that kind of build around synergy type of cube that I thought was very interesting was he has kind of like a rare section, which is like 46 cards that are on every single draft that he does. And those get shuffled up, and those are kind of the 15th card. So it comes kind of is a little bit different every time you play that cube.
That's a really cool idea. I've heard of that before with regular cube. I know that the designer then built the irregular cube, I think it's
Mm-hmm.
called. And then that cube had some cards that weren't always in the draft, like the spicy rares that may not even be that good, but can just spice up the draft here and there.
Yep, exactly. And we have one of our people that play in our cube group. He has a legacy cube, and they've taken the idea of like what are the top 50 legacy type of cards. And those kind of get shuffled up, and those are kind of the 15th card when we play that cube. So there's not always the same cards that we're seeing when we do play a legacy cube. It's a little bit different. And I really like that idea of like you do have these glue cards that are always in the cube, but you might have like the some set of cards that are always going to be a little bit different. You might not always see them.
Yeah, and like one cube that I actually did kind of basically clone it was when I was in college. I had my peasant cube, but I wanted to have a more powerful cube. And back then, I didn't really have much in the way of cube design knowledge.
Mhm.
So I basically cloned down the MTGO Legacy Cube, or most of it. I took inspiration from what I had already in my collection. I was a broke college student
Of course.
and built like a mostly version of the MTGO Legacy Cube. It was a lot of fun, but I definitely did not stick with the original Legacy Cube. I put in a lot of weird cards like conspiracies or cards from unsets, and it ended up being a blast. But if I had not taken that original MTGO Legacy Cube, I really would not have known where to start to go something that was more powerful than just my peasant cube, which was just cards that I had lying around in my friend's basement.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the big things that Ian and I have discussed a lot about is like there's no right way to quote unquote build a cube. There's no right or wrong way to taking ideas for cube. And there's just so many different ideas and things are still like being populated and thought about. If you're not familiar with some of the cubes that are coming from like CubeCon and things like that, the different cubes like the one drop cube or like we talked about before the 100 ornithopter cube, these are just ideas that like no one really had a couple of years ago and all of a sudden are starting to populate and pop up.
Yeah, I like a lot of what you've done with the budget synergy cube from looking at the original list. I know that you added a lot more fixing, like improved fixing to make the lands better. And I think that that made the draft feel really good because a lot of budget synergy cubes, the lands are also budget. I think it originally had vivid lands and low power lands, but you upgraded it to be like fetches, shocks, which
Yeah,
really
there
allowed for it felt like diversity of decks to explode. So it wasn't just like you were kind of forced into two colors, but I was a Sultai deck, and it really allowed the synergy to blossom.
Yeah, that was one of my things when I played this at the Boston Cube Party. It was besides the Vivid Lands, it was just like doubled up or tripled up on Pain Lands.
Oh, interesting.
And while that's like that's a cool idea, it doesn't really you're kind of forced into those like one or two color type of decks. And I love to be able to open up and have that variety of stuff. So when I was looking at it ways to really upgrade that, one of the big things I looked at was looking at the different people who have those different synergy cubes and figuring out like what did they do with their land package and figuring out how can I bring that in and still keep the base idea of this like budget but also giving more of an idea or more strategies for people to be able to play.
Yeah, another thing that I really like with this cube is the inclusion of having a lot of different MDFCs. Like I already mentioned Pinnacle Monk, but another one that was really cool was there was, I think, Stump Stomp, which is a Gruul fight spell that's also a red-green tap land on the back. I think the MDFCs are just fantastic. I've been putting so many of them in my different cubes. My new cube that I'm building is like probably has like 30 MDFCs
Yeah.
because they just allow you to take a card that may not be as powerful but can also go into your land slot. And it's a really interesting decision during the draft.
Yeah, it really helps with being able to draft lands where you can get away with doing maybe only 3 or 4 colored lands in your package, but having these MDFC lands really kind of give you the idea of like it can be a land, it all can also be a spell, and it really helps kind of mold your deck and be able to build different things.
So, what have been some of your favorite decks that you've seen pop up in some cloned cubes that you've had, like the spicy ramen or this new cube?
I love seeing what people's ideas of because just because I have an idea of what I think is going to be played is not always kind of what comes out. So it's always cool to see different people come up with ideas on things. And I didn't come into Cube as a limited like expertise. I played a lot of standard, I played a lot of modern. That's kind of where my background is. So when I got into Cube, it was a very learning experience. Even today, I mean, I still don't 3-0 drafts, but it's always cool to see what people are coming out and just trying to be a better Magic player. And that's kind of what Cube has done for me is it's really opened my eyes to a lot of limited and figuring out how ways I can put stuff together.
Yeah, there was one really funny deck on Saturday where we had a new player drafting with us. and they went mono white. They were like a mono white aggro deck.
Mhm.
But then they also just randomly were playing Dark Depths. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And they were like, yeah, I drafted this land. It looked cool. I can remove counters from it. And then like game three, they also just played Thespian Stage. And I was like, oh, and then they were like, yeah, this is another land that looked cool in my deck. And then I told them after the match,
Yeah,
do you know that these two lands are a combo? And he was like, what? And then I walked through the Dark Depths Thespian Stage combo, and he was like, what? It was
yeah,
so funny.
I definitely have heard that conversation, and I was like, and that's kind of the thing is like it sometimes is hard for newer players to play cube because there is just so much interaction that people don't always know. But that's kind of what we try to do as a cube group is we do always are trying to look at each other's decks and try to figure out stuff. And I think it definitely does help when we do have newer players to kind of explain things sometimes, so that way if we ever do get them again, they kind of know what to look out for.
I've always been a believer that Commander is not a very good way to teach new players. Like, it's so many cards. Like, people don't really explain what they're doing on their turns. People are like, "Oh, I dropped this card and this, and then I combo and then pass." I feel like new players just kind of ignore what's going around them and just are told, "Okay, that's what it does." Okay, and then they just are barely trying to learn their new deck. Compared to
Yeah,
Cube, where it teaches you a lot of skills,
yeah, no,
drafting, card evaluation, and then players are usually in Cube, it's very casual, willing to help new players. One on one, it's easier.
oh yeah, no, definitely one of those things. I mean, I will say like even when I was as a story, as a little side story, that when I was first getting into standard and playing things like that, I was during the Swans combo era when Magic came up, and a lot of people
Oh,
didn't know what Swans combo did. People would just be like, "Oh hey, so I combo," and people would be like, "Okay, yeah." There were some players who just like didn't actually know how the combo went.
that's funny.
I can definitely say that there was a time where I was witnessing a player be like, okay, I'm going to Swans combo. And the guy was like, okay, well, combo out. And the person like went through two cycles of it and then stopped because they didn't know actually how to combo with the
That's so
Swans.
good. They
Uh,
just got so
so,
used to people conceding that they never
yeah,
bothered to learn it.
and I mean it's definitely one of those things that does happen where like some people are just so used to shortcutting stuff, sometimes you just assume that the people know what they're doing, so it is always good, I would say, to like go over your decks with people, figure out different things. Like just because you drafted something, you never know where somebody else might actually like help you figure out certain things, so the next time that you draft that you kind of have an idea of what could happen.
Yeah, I've definitely also many times when there's a new player at the end of the draft say, all right, let me see your pool. What did you draft? And then kind of help them piece together something because it might not always be the most cohesive deck, but we can usually throw something together.
Yeah.
So let's do a pack one, pick one from the cube. So we have a pack here. Do you want to read it off?
Yeah, let me read it off. So in the pack, we have Overgrown Tomb, we have Tusk the Explorer,
I love that. So funny. Tuk Tuk the Explorer.
we have Stone Coral Serpent, we have a hard hitting question, we have
Even
Even
Eternal.
Even Eternal, we've got Sanction, we've got Thirst for Discovery, we've got Hoarding Outburst, we have Forbidden Landscape,
Foreboding
uh,
Landscape.
oh sorry, Foreboding Landscape.
And then we have Illyrios Enraptured here. We have Stump Stomp, Wooded Foothills, Blood Artist, Mole Drifter, and Organ Hoarder. It's an interesting pack here. What are you thinking from it?
So when I first look at this pack, I'm trying to think about the different things that we could be doing. I usually like to go a little bit conservative. So the kind of the four picks that I'm looking at is I'm looking at the Overgrown Tomb, I'm looking at the Wooded Foothills, I'm looking at the Blood Artist, and I'm looking at the Hoarding Outburst. The reason that I'm looking at those four cards is because two of those cards really kind of put us into an archetype, with Blood Artists being able to be sacked and sacking creatures doing that. Hoarding Outbursts is really that kind of that red white kind of go wide token strategy. And the lands are just good fixing lands that still let us kind of go into other things if we're seeing stuff. What are you looking at?
Yeah, so just to be clear, I don't think I said it. This is the Budget Synergy Cube, your version of it. And there's a few cards that are interesting here. When I'm doing like a lower power cube, I often just try and go for as much value as possible because often it can be a little bit slower gameplay and two for ones become really strong. I'm really looking at Mole Drifter here. It also has a blink card, so I like that. And it works really well in like graveyard strategies, it two for ones at least. And then the slower cube getting to five is definitely possible. So that's definitely a big pick for me. And like you said, I'm always open to take fixing. Wooded Foothills is really good. Stomp being the Gruul MDFC. So it's a red green land, or it is a fight spell. So that can fit in red or green. There's a lot of really interesting cards here. So what do you think you're going to take in the end?
So probably in the end, I'm probably gonna take that overgrown tomb.
Okay, yeah. I would probably do Wooded Foothills over Overgrown Tomb, but that's interesting. So why Overgrown Tomb over Wooded Foothills?
I like to be able to have a solid land. I mean, Wooded Foothills is great because it can grab basics and stuff, but I like to have just a solid land so I know that like if something comes around, that we always have a land to kind of go with it.
I'm probably on Moldrifter. It's too hard for me to pass. I mean, Blank. I mean, what am
That's
I
fair.
even using? I think every pack one pick one we've done on this show, I've always taken a Blink card. It's hard for me not to. And yeah, this has been a lot of fun, Ken. Do you have anything else, last thoughts you have?
A big thing, like we said before, is just it's a good idea to reach out to different people in the community, especially when it comes to Cube. Most people are very, very welcoming for different ideas and trying to talk to you. And you don't want to cut yourself off from all this information that we have. It's great to be able to reach out and especially because of the month we're in and things that have happened, just check out on people, make sure people are doing well.
Absolutely. And it's been great having you. We'll definitely have you on again in the future. And thank you all for listening. Like, subscribe, hit the follow button, whatever platform you're on. And we hope to see you soon. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.